She was like locally known as a palm reader, tarot card lady, fortune teller type of thing. And she predicted 3 things about Austin's life very early on. He would marry a strawberry blonde woman, which he did do. He would have 2 sons after his mother dies, which he did do. And then the 3rd, his daughters would form a very successful musical group.
What? So this is preordained.
Preordained.
You are listening to Tape Spaghetti, the podcast about the twisted and tangled innards of the music industry. Some of this content may not be for all listeners or viewers, so if it's not for you, no harm, no foul. We'll just catch you on the next one. All right, without further ado, let's get into it. Here we go.
Welcome back, dear listener, to yet another episode of Tape Spaghetti. I am Scott Marquardt. This is Blake Weiland.
Hello, and I am the reason that this may or may not, we'll see, be slightly later than you're used to hearing it. But you're hearing it, and that's what matters.
That's all that really matters. Blake's sister had a baby, which is delightful, and that slowed us down a little bit on one week, which is a pretty good reason to be slowed down as far as reasons go.
I think so. And then when the kid's older, he can look back and listen to this episode and go, "Oh, that's what was so important that he was trying to get to." It's very, very important episode.
Well, I was telling you before we jumped on,
yes.
But for the listener, I am excited. I don't know anything about cars really, but I purchased my first mistake of an old car. It doesn't feel like a mistake yet, but who knows? I got an '85 Mercedes 380 SL that are like they're cool if you know what it is, then you're like, oh, cool. If you don't, it's like a relatively cheap but pretty vibey car from back then, because they made just a whole crap ton of them for 20 years. And today was the first day I drove it into the office. So that was super fun for me.
Yeah. This is one of those cars, I am a car enthusiast. So I think a lot of car enthusiasts, they kind of go one way with it. Typically, I feel like I like a lot of different cars. I like really high end stuff. I appreciate scrappy pieces of junk that are cobbled together. You know, American muscle cars is where my wheelhouse really lives, but you're
an American muscle boy, so it makes sense you would like American muscle cars.
This is true. But I've always liked those Mercedes. I think they're really cool. They make me want to put on a scarf and drive around with goggles on, you know?
Yeah, my wife and I joked that we need to both get, some hair scarves to put on, look like Thelma and Louise.
Well, I mentioned this a few weeks ago, but when I was at Norman's Rare Guitars, I was like, I've got to buy a shirt because this is just iconic. So bought a shirt and a hat. And as I was putting it in my bag, Norman was like, make sure you get a shirt. I'm like, oh, yeah, I already did. He's like, oh, you bought it? He's like, well, you're from Portland. Have a scarf. He gives me a Norman's Rare Guitars scarf, not knowing that I run extremely hot and wear shorts in the wintertime, but somebody in my family will have a nice scarf. Maybe
I can't think of the day that would have to occur for you to need a scarf.
I bought one a long time ago thinking it would be cool because it's a cool looking scarf. And I put it on and I went, yeah, that's too hot. Get it out of here. And
I mean, you already have a beard, which is like half of a scarf.
This is true. I did buy that scarf pre-beard. I couldn't grow a beard until my late 20s. So, yeah, it's really weird.
I didn't actually know that.
Now you do. I couldn't do it till I had children.
Huh. I saw a picture of me in 24, early Stringjoy days, and I had this big gross beard.
No, it's wonderful.
I stopped when I turned 30, and I was like, okay, I don't need to pretend anymore.
You don't need to look older than you are. Now you're trying to do the opposite. I don't need to
desperately try to look older. Now I'll just remain. I'll ride this one out.
Man, but you got good beard genes.
I've got good hair genes.
True.
The hair grows out of everywhere, including my face. Yeah, but it's not a bad deal. I got all this stuff up here. I will take, looking like Robin Williams on the hands in exchange.
I thought you were going to say Teen Wolf, but we'll go with that.
Or Teen Wolf.
Yeah. Next time I'm going to see you, it's going to be surfing on top of a car. That'll be great.
Heck yeah.
Well, we're not talking about surfing on top of cars. We're not talking about body hair, but we are talking about a hair-related band, though.
That's
actually. Right. Yeah. We are talking today about the Shaggs. And I say hair-related because they're named after the shaggy haircuts of the time. I didn't know that until doing research for this episode, that's where the name.
I didn't know that either.
So yeah, supposedly anyway. Now this story is really interesting. If you don't know the Shaggs, if you've never heard of the Shaggs, I don't usually like to recommend this because in this day and age, it's easy to get distracted and forget what you were doing, and you would leave the content and never come back. But I think it's really important. If you've never heard the Shaggs before, you need to listen to them at least for one song before continuing this episode. So
you should.
If you've never heard them, pause it. Go look up My Pal Foot Foot is probably their most famous song, I think.
I know Philosophy of the World best, personally.
Okay,
Philosophy of the World is like a little more accessible.
It's a little more accessible.
They're almost playing in time for like some brief moments. They're just a little out of time, but it kind of works.
Mm-hmm. And that's like most of it, except to varying degrees of out of time, but works. But yeah, if you go listen to that album specifically, it's from 1969, The Philosophy of the World. Title track's great. My Pal Foot Foot's probably the, like, you're right. Philosophy of the World probably is the more known song. That's probably the second. Give those a quick listen, either one, and then come back to this, because I think you need the context to understand how strange this story really is. It's probably one of the weirdest stories in music, and I'm surprised that it didn't come up amongst our like brainstorming sessions of what are we going to talk about? I was like, oh, duh. Got to get into the Shaggs. This is a strange
strange music. I don't know the strange story, so I'm obviously excited to hear that. But the music itself is it's odd. It's strange. It's like in a Captain Beefhearty way. If like the people playing Captain Beefheart's music weren't like incredible musicians in their own right, trying to be out of sync with each other.
Yeah. Well, and what I didn't know as much, obviously. It's very context based, because you hear the initial story and we'll kind of give the general overview and then get into some details. And you're like, oh, what a quirky, weird thing. That's so odd. But when you really think about what it means, it's actually a pretty dark story. And I think because the results of the music, or the results of the abuse really is what it comes down to, are this really well-known in some circles kind of outsider music thing that became so iconic. It almost gets a pass in some way. And really, it really shouldn't. It's pretty bad. Like nobody should have to live like these girls lived under any circumstance. But we'll get into the tale here. So the reason I found it is probably like most people of my age and slightly older, was because Kurt Cobain listed Philosophy of the World as one of his personal favorite albums of all time. That's the first time I ever heard of the band The Shaggs. That was like, wonder what that is.
Yeah, you were like, I should check out the Pixies' Surfer Rosa and the Shaggs' Philosophy of the World. These are probably all the same thing. And they're not.
They're not. No, Surfer Rosa is quite different, as it turns out. Yeah. That's a different story. But some other famous people who were into the Shaggs include Frank Zappa, supposedly, though this is debated. He is frequently cited as saying the Shaggs were, quote, better than the Beatles. This is a hard, like, Frank's such a clever guy and he likes to yank people's chain. You know, I've never personally seen where he has said this. I have only seen him quoted as saying this.
Yeah.
To me, this sounds a bit tongue in cheek, you know?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. I don't think Frank actually thinks the Shaggs are better than the Beatles, but I'm not Frank Zappa, so maybe I'm wrong there. Lester Bangs, famous rock critic, he declared the record a landmark in rock history and praised its sincerity, which I actually see where he's going there. It is very sincere, or at least sincere sounding. Rolling Stone in 1980 called their album wonderful and awful in equal measure. Again, I think that's pretty accurate.
I think that's about right. Yeah, well put.
Yeah. Erwin Chusid, I'm not sure how to say his last name. One of those things I've only read, never heard anybody say out loud. Could be Chusid. I think it's Chusid. He is often called like the godfather of like outsider music curation, you know? And he called the Shaggs the godmothers of outsider music. So they're very well regarded by a lot of people who are into weird stuff. It's kind of the nutshell version here. But to set the tone for everything, they started in Fremont, New Hampshire, which is a tiny little New England town in Rockingham County. Around the time of them being there, it was population around 3,000 to 4,000, and it didn't grow a whole lot. Up into the 2000s, it was still under 5,000 people. So it just kind of gives you an idea of
I've never been
size.
to New Hampshire.
Me either. Yeah. I've met some
Seems
people
like
from New
it'd
Hampshire.
Be nice, but
yeah. It seems beautiful, but again, the guy I met from New Hampshire that I spent the most time with was a rough fella. I don't think everyone from New Hampshire quite fits this guy's description. He was interesting. We'll put it that way. It was a very agriculture driven place. A lot of pine lumber, brick making, textile mills, that type of thing.
Yep.
Very conservative, tight knit, working class culture, and outsiders or oddities. I kind of picture the town in Footloose. Like, what's going on over there?
Beaumont?
What is that? Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. It's definitely like a bedroom community, and they don't have a lot of tolerance for the eccentrics of the world. Supposedly, this is
sometimes those communities have a lot of tolerance for eccentrics.
I was going to say,
totally depends.
If I just flipped this and said Silverton, Oregon, it would be a completely different story. Mm-hmm. They love that kind of stuff there. And all the other stuff sort of fits. But this is an interesting one. So this is the Wiggins family we're talking about here. And we've got some key figures here. We've got Austin Wiggins Jr., who's the father. He was born in Fremont. He's a textile mill worker. He's very much opposed to hippie culture, dating. He's kind of authoritarian, very controlling, and a very serious, straight-faced man. He's
Did he just have the three daughters, or were there others?
So we'll get into that. That does matter a lot here. So his mother is Annie Wiggin. That's their mother, Annie Wiggin, Austin's wife. She's a strawberry blonde, homemaker. She raised 6 kids. And she died in 2008, 30 years after Austin's death. So Austin did die pretty young, and I have a theory as to maybe why. We'll get into that throughout the story. So there's Dorothy Wiggin, who's known as Dot, Betty Wiggin, and Helen Wiggin. So Dorothy was lead guitar and vocals, primary songwriter. Betty is rhythm guitar and vocals, and Helen is on drums. And then we have Rachel Wiggin, who's the youngest. She occasionally played bass, but not always. So kind of a mixed bag there. And then this is the weird part to me. I'm sure this information is available somewhere, but in all the normal articles and sources you can kind of pull up, Rolling Stone things and whatnot, there's 2 brothers. And that's what you get to know about them.
That's it. Yep.
I'm like, okay, well, I'm sure that they had a life and a role in this somehow, but we get to know that they existed.
Okay.
I'm like, all right, well, hopefully there's some more on them later. Because when you hear the rest of this, you'll see there's no way they didn't experience some trauma as well. Mm-hmm. But this is where it starts getting real weird. So Austin's mother, again, unnamed in most sources. I feel like that these people should have names. It bothers me for some reason. I don't know why. But she was locally known as a palm reader, tarot card lady, fortune teller type of thing. And she predicted 3 things about Austin's life very early on. He would marry a strawberry blonde woman, which he did do. He would have 2 sons after his mother dies, which he did do. And then the third, his daughters would form a very successful musical group.
What? So this is preordained by his sort of mystic mother. That this is what would happen?
Yes, exactly. And so after the first 2 predictions came true, Austin was like, well, the third's gonna come true.
Of course.
We're gonna do this, whether anybody wants me to or not. It became his life's mission. Everything revolved around getting these girls to be a famous rock band. And he had this vision in his brain of them being on the Ed Sullivan Show and just blowing up and having this massive success. Now, if you remember what I said about Austin, this is extra strange. He did not like dancing. He did not like the hippie movement. He did not like rock and roll. He did not
This is what's happening in the late 60s.
He didn't like any of it. He was so anti all of it. So these people never even really heard music, really. They just were supposed to be a famous band using traditional, now rock and roll instrumentation and arrangements, but never have heard any of it to base anything off of. It's so bizarre. I mean, this is how serious he gets about it. He pulls his daughters out of public school. He pulls them out and they go to American school is what it's called. It's a Chicago-based like homeschooling program, basically.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. And I know some people who did that in the 90s, and it would have given you a lot more time to be in a band if you did indeed go through that program. He bought them their instruments. They were not interested. They had no training, as we discussed, and he didn't care. He forced them to have very strict schedules here. So they would basically wake up, they would practice music for hours and hours every day, basically all day, and they would perform nightly calisthenic routines because when they got on Ed Sullivan, he wanted them to be in shape.
There's something about calisthenics that feels innately culty. You know, the calisthenic routine seems like a core ingredient of most successful cults.
I feel like if it's group oriented specifically, if there's some guy at the park doing dips, he's probably good. But if you got like a whole crew of teenage girls doing, I don't know. I see what you're saying there. This gets weird in a hurry. But, you know, like this isn't exactly culty because he doesn't want anybody else in here. This is just his family band. It's just how they lived their life every single day. It was just music, practice, constantly performances for him. And he would sit there and judge like, that's wrong. That's wrong. That's bad. But he's not a creative person. He has no concept for what good music is or could be because he doesn't experience any of it. So he's sitting there judging these girls' performances every night, telling them how much they suck, and then expecting them to improve with no reference for anything. It's so weird.
Yeah. So, I mean, like what I was wondering about initially is like, so this guy, as far as we know, doesn't play a musical instrument.
He doesn't. Yeah, does not.
And so when it's like they're going to practice for hours, if you don't have somebody coming in that like knows how these instruments are supposed to be played, what does practicing really even mean? It's just you're just picking away at it. Like, how can you get better if you don't have any sort of like focus or direction? You know, it's like teaching yourself history without a book or a teacher.
Yeah, you're just like,
well,
what do I do? Oh, I just looked at the trees, and that told me what happened in the Civil War. Because there was marks in them. I don't know. It's really weird. And then like to make it even worse, they're supposed to be writing music. And he did insist that they write their own because they couldn't hear anybody else's. So they're supposed to become these teen sensation rock star people, but they have no dating, no socializing, no real contact with the outside world. How are they going to write songs about things that anybody's going to be able to relate to?
Right. Yeah, they had no lived experience.
So not only do they not know anything about music, they don't really know anything about life. So who's the biggest consumer of music, especially at this time? Teenagers. How are you going to write music that vibes with teenagers if you never have teenage experiences? It's so crazy to me.
Yeah, it's very strange.
Really hard.
Like, this reminds me, I knew someone once, I won't like out them because they're kind of a thing, but they're like, they wrote YA fiction and have actually become quite successful in it. But when I knew them in college, they totally were like didn't really have many friends, didn't like go out and do anything. Like they just kind of lived in bookland. And again, like apparently have been very successful with it. But I was always like, you're not really writing about any experiences that you know much about. Like your experiences are other people's experiences that you got through books. And then you're just going to like kind of reconstitute those things and transform them into a story that you're going to tell. And that feels, I guess it's fine, but it feels a little inauthentic.
I mean, at least he or she or this person had something to draw off of that was at least something based on something
but with
else.
these people, they're not consuming that kind of media.
Yeah, they don't even have that. So that's why you hear, like, if you did what I asked you to do in the beginning, listener/viewer, and listen to My Pal Foot, you're like, okay. And that's why all the lyrics revolve around like family life and, you know, pets and things like that, because that's the only thing they know. They don't know anything else.
Like who are parents is another like kind of more accessible one.
Yeah. Who are parents? And it talks about how wonderful parents are. And let's not pretend like that these practice sessions are the practice sessions that you and I had growing up, where we're off without parental supervision, kind of making racket and experimenting and you know, having fun. This is like if Whiplash, but like everybody sucks. That's the best way I can put it.
Well put, yes.
Yeah. So it's like you got a guy sitting there who has no idea what he's talking about, being like, you got to do it like this.
Do it better.
And then they're like, do it. What? Okay. But I don't know how to do it in the first place. So I'm just going to hit it until it makes some sort of sound and then arrange it in a way. And I'm going to write something.
And what does that even mean? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like feral music. Though I'm sure like the dad had, I mean, he's heard music at some point in his life, you know.
Well, like he wouldn't have had a dream of them being on Ed Sullivan if he hadn't seen Ed Sullivan.
Right.
So, yeah. I say he has no reference. He doesn't have he does have some reference. It's just not a constant in his lives the way it is for most people who are obsessed with making music.
Right.
So these girls, and this honestly sounds kind of torturous. Like this, I can't imagine. So they're going through all this, and then they're like, all right, let's take you to some talent shows. And so they go to a show in a local town called Exeter, and the audience just rips them apart. They're just mocking them. They're throwing cans at them. They're laughing at them. It's just it's a terrible experience for them. They end up playing some shows in like nursing homes and things like that. And then, as you can expect, the nursing homes weren't quite as can throwy as the general public, but it was just kind of like a bunch of old people being very confused. They're like, oh, okay. All right there, dear. Thank you very much for that type of thing. Like, let's stop now.
I was curious. So Exeter is where Exeter Academy is. I knew a few people that went to like prep school. I think it was a boarding school, if I remember right. Okay. It's like one of the best schools in the country for this.
One of the best can throwing schools in the country.
Yes, that a lot of people from very well-to-do families in the Northeast will send their kids to here. It has an endowment of $1.6 billion in its high school.
Whoa. Okay.
If that tells you anything, but that's there in New Hampshire. So I'm picturing like all these like, you know, wealthy prep school kids witnessing this band at this talent show and throwing cans at them.
Well, and actually I'm glad you said that, because I didn't really know that about Exeter. And now that paints a little bit different picture. It's almost like, okay, we've got these rednecks from the mill town next door coming over and going like, I can't even remember some of the lyrics. You know, it's pretty out there. And yeah, they're a bunch of rowdy teenagers from the rich school. That's almost a worse image than even what I was picturing. I was actually picturing more like their neighbors. And now it's like, oh, it's like definitely a rich versus poor dynamic going on there.
Yeah.
So then they started playing back in Fremont on Saturday nights weekly, actually. They started playing the Fremont Town Hall. And basically, the only reason that anyone showed up was to mock and heckle and throw things. That's all it was. Like, nobody showed up because they wanted to watch the band. Nobody cared about the music they were making at all. It became hey, let's go. It was like a freak show. Let's go down there and see these people and make fun of them and be mean to them. And man, they just never can catch a break. Their dad's mean to them at home.
Yeah, they don't want to be doing this, and then they're going, and then everyone's like, boo, this sucks. Go back to wherever you came from.
Yeah, and they're like, but where we came from is just a house that forces us to do what we're doing.
Yeah, it's like being in the Jackson 5 if you were bad.
This is exactly what it is.
Yeah.
Like, and in some ways, like like everybody knows now, they didn't back when the Jackson 5 broke, like how awful Joe Jackson was. Like he was a monster. And unfortunately, I don't think, man, maybe this is starting to turn a little bit. I don't think Austin Wiggins has received the same treatment from the indie rock community that kind of accepts the Shaggs as like part of their own.
Right.
It really feels to me like the story is a bit romanticized. And, you know, he's kind of viewed as like, oh, I'm just the guy fulfilling the prophecy, you know, type of thing. And it's like, no, you're just as much of a monster as Joe, really. And we'll get into some later revelations that like he might have been even worse. Oof. Like it's bad. I have a different view now after doing the research on this and like really thinking about what this must have been like. I used to think this was more fun. And now it's like, this is, I mean, the output's fun. The output is fun, but what it took to get there just wasn't worth it.
Yeah. And I mean, and I'm sure we'll touch on this, but like in some ways the legacy of this is kind of still people laughing at them. I know that not everyone feels that way about it, but it's, you know,
we kind of are. I mean, it's hard. It's hard not to.
If anyone that listens to it, you'll be like, oh, this is bad. How did this get recorded? Is like, and I think that's the big question that I'm excited to get to is like, there's a lot of bad bands. I played in a lot of talent shows myself, and there are plenty of people that are bad at this.
Oh, I've done plenty of bad music.
But most of them, especially back in the 60s, did not an album make.
Right. Well, that's all changed today with the Focusrite recording console, or excuse me, recording interfaces. We all can do it now.
And let me tell you, something that mortifies me about the kids of today, like I was recording music all the way growing up, and it was bad, like because I was 12, but there's nothing I could do with it. I just like made CDs and then they laid around. But if I had like had the ability, I would have like pumped that stuff all over the internet and tried to make myself, 12-year-old famous. And I am so glad that didn't happen.
Yeah. There, especially for those reasons, right? It's
right. I would hate to like live with that legacy now.
Yeah. No, I definitely recorded some stuff that like I have on CD and I will go back and revisit once in a while. And I'm glad that it's not on the internet. It's not necessarily offensive or even, honestly, not even as out there as some of the music we're talking about today. But still, my ear has changed and I'm going like, I'm surprised I recorded that.
Yep.
What was I thinking?
Yep. I believe I did an entire album that was covering every single song on What's the Story Morning Glory by Oasis, but covered by like a 13-year-old.
Yes.
And I'm glad that that's gone somewhere. I have no idea where it is. And I hope to God it's never found.
Yeah. Yes. There's some things better left unheard. I agree. Yes. Yeah. And what's with it? I mean, this is a little bit of a segue, but what's with us at like 13, 14, even up to like 20, where we're like, I got something the world needs to hear. And it's this cover of a song I really like. It means a lot to me. And it's going to mean so much when the world hears my version of it.
Right. Yeah. Don't listen to the original, the good one that like probably anyone would admit is better than the one that I did. You want to hear this.
You want to hear this. And you're like so excited to show people. But I mean, it's part of the process. Nobody comes out the gate. Well, I should say very few people come out the gate with just a banger of a record for their first thing. I don't even think that necessarily the first notes made by the Beatles were probably the best notes that have ever been heard on planet Earth.
Famously it took them. That's why they got so good, as they practiced so very much.
Yes. Without being forced to by their father.
Are you at all a fan of Big Thief?
The band can't say that I am. I know of them, but I can't say I'm a big fan. I can't say I'm not a fan. I've never really listened.
They're awesome. They make like, it's not even really weird, but like indie music. They're really, really good. Would highly recommend. But their lead singer, Adrienne Lenker, I think she's a brilliant songwriter and has this really unique kind of scratchy, warbly voice. But similarly, I unearthed, it's on the internet. She like had made an album in like the mid 2000s that is nothing, like was very much like a kind of proto pop thing. She was like her parents or whatever. She was trying to be a pop star. She was probably 17. And like seeing her and knowing her now, which is this very kind of like authentic, maybe a little crusty thing. And then there's these like shots where she looks like Jessica Simpson from this like early album. And again, I'm like, that's you made an album before you had figured out what you wanted to do and how it should all work. You made an album and pumped it out there and tried to make it a thing. And probably now we're like, I hope no one finds that.
Well, and maybe at that time that is what she wanted to do, but your tastes definitely change as you get older and you realize like, the way I view the world at 14 is not necessarily the way I view it even at 16. Really, like, it changes a lot during that time frame. And now we're able to take a snapshot of it, put it on Instagram, and it might go viral for the wrong reasons. So yeah, definitely.
And it'll exist forever.
Forever and ever and ever.
Anyway, back to our originally scheduled programming.
No. It's worth talking about. It's related. So we're going to get to the recording of Philosophy of the World. Now, they have other records that were recorded much later, but this is really the one when you hear like Kurt Cobain talking about it and you hear all these other people talking about it. This is the record they're talking about. It's Philosophy of the World, the first recording. So it was recorded in March 9th in 1969, as all important things happen in 1969 at Fleetwood Studios in Revere, Massachusetts. It was all recorded in one day with none other than good old Austin standing over there like an abusive general telling everyone who actually knows what they're doing how to do their jobs, because that's just the type of guy he is. Supposedly, the studio staff laughed uncontrollably and had to lock themselves in the control room to avoid like that coming through the recording session because it was hilarious to them. They'd never seen anything like this before. They're like, all they know is this dad has booked the recording session. He says these girls are going to be the next big thing. Wait till you hear it. It's going to blow your mind. And then they come in and play My Pal Foot Foot. And the guitars are out of tune. The rhythms are erratic at best. I don't know how much swing they're putting on those things. There definitely wasn't a click track involved. That wasn't really a thing at the time. But still, metronomes were, and those were ignored. So it's very difficult to listen to for most people. It's funny because the drums will like kind of lag behind and then just surge uncontrollably, like without any reason. It's like, oh, whoa, what are they doing here? And everything's just clanky and weird. And yeah, again, like the lyrics are just family life, pets, morality, all that stuff. It's very sweet, but like juxtaposed with this just almost, it sounds like you said, Captain Beefheart. It sounds almost intentionally abrasive, right? But it's not. That's what's weird about it.
Yeah, there's just something about hearing a recorded track where the musicians are like so tempo off from each other at different times. That's hypnotic and kind of interesting. But this is very much like it's what it sounds like. It's people that don't really know how to play their instruments.
Yes. And it's weird because under normal circumstances, if you're forced to sit there and play something over and over again, you tend to get really good at it. But again, if you have no reference for what that means, it's just going to be you winging it the whole time. And that's not going to lead to anywhere that makes any sense to most people. So Austin clearly like dumped some money into this, right? This is he's bought all these instruments.
You don't just like go down to the local label and press up an album and all this back then for no money.
No, it was very expensive to do. This was the time where this was unreachable for most people. But he did that and supposedly ordered about 1,000 copies, which again, for a family band that hasn't made a dime yet, because I don't think they were getting paid anything for those shows they were. I'm just hypothesizing. I don't think they were making much money, if any, at those shows they were playing. But he ordered 1,000 copies. There's been some conflicting accounts that like only 100 showed up. I don't know. I don't really know what the truth is there, but he did order 1,000, and then he claimed later that the producer. Sorry, my screen went blank for a second.
You're all
we're
good.
back.
I'm here.
And we're back. It just shut off. And I was like, am I not? Is this Austin coming from the grave? Because I'm criticizing him so aggressively on this episode. Anyway, he wrote the liner notes and he described the Shaggs as pure, unaffected by outside influences, insisting they would never, ever change. Yeah. And I guess they didn't. I guess he was right in that regard. And in a weird way, it's like the prediction did come true, because here we are talking about it. Now, are they famous in the traditional sense that I think they're, swimming through gold coins a la Scrooge McDuck because of all this stuff that their dad did? No, but there are at least, I would say, thousands of people that know who they are. And that's more than can be said for a lot of bands.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely like it's better to be bad than mediocre.
Yeah,
if your goal is to be remembered, that's an easier way to do it. I have some questions.
Okay, I'll see if I can answer them.
So one question is, as far as I can tell, the lead single was My Pal Foot Foot. He pressed it on a 45 RPM. Yeah. With the B-side. What was the B-side? Things I Wonder. But My Pal Foot Foot was released as the A-side.
Right.
So there are more accessible songs that I think even if you didn't know much about music, I think that you would come to the quick conclusion that Philosophy of the World is a much more accessible song than My Pal Foot Foot.
I think so. That's when we were talking about this before we started recording. I didn't tell Scott. We only tell each other the bare minimum. Everybody, pulling the curtain back a little bit. Mm-hmm. But I did say, you familiar with this band? Though I kind of knew that he already was. And listen to My Pal Foot Foot, because it's probably their most famous one. But it's so hard to listen to.
It's even on this record, even. Mm-hmm. This is an exceedingly difficult song. And so there's something about choosing that song to release as a single that, and I'm sure that was, Daddy Wiggin, that made that call, because that's who decided absolutely everything.
Right.
That makes me feel like he kind of knew, like he wanted to release this really weird stuff,
That's interesting. Yeah. Do you think that maybe he was taking your advice in some ways, where he's like, look, maybe he, like I said, he did watch Ed Sullivan. He probably had more exposure to music than the girls did, almost certainly. Mm-hmm. Definitely more exposure to life than they did. So he's heard things at some point. Maybe he thought they're okay, this prediction, if I want to make it true, they're not talented enough to be the Beatles. So let's try to be remembered. And
that's what I'm wondering. I mean, he knew, even if you don't know music very well, you'd know, listening to this band, oh, this is not great music in a traditional sense. So maybe we just lean into the weird.
Yeah. And in that way, maybe they really were, maybe not the girls themselves, but perhaps Austin really was a somewhat of a visionary in that way for this outsider thing. I mean, did Captain Beefheart hear this? I don't know. What did he think about it if he did hear it? There's a lot of stuff. Outsider music has become a just kind of a blanket term for anything that's really strange. And I don't mean Lou Reed strange. I mean really strange, like this. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of artists that fit into that genre. Rock and Roll McDonald's.
Wesley Willis.
Yeah.
I haven't wanted to touch Wesley Willis just yet on this particular podcast, but I'm sure that it'll come up.
I'm sure we'll get into Rock and Roll McDonald's at some point. Of course. Yes, it seems necessary. But outsider music has become a thing, and I feel like it's very, very tangential to indie rock in a lot of ways. Mm-hmm. Maybe dips its toe into punk a little bit. The difference is, I think, with indie rock and punk, and even general noise rock, like Sonic Youth type things, there's the self-awareness there that people Sonic Youth knows they're making a bunch of noise. They know that's what they're doing. They're doing it on purpose. And it may not be for everyone, but it definitely makes more sense if you listen to it. It has a structure, even though it seems like maybe it's right on the edge of not having one. And the Shaggs, they don't have that self-awareness because they were some of the first to like record music that was even remotely like this. And B, I hate to keep harping on this, but they didn't have a reference point for anything. So it makes me think that you might be onto something there with that theory that Austin's like, I got to make this prophecy come true. And this is the only way it's going to happen.
Right. And that's the other thing about this too, is that like, I think so much of it is the phenomenon of like, how did this get made? Which I think there's a strange thing with understanding music back then versus now to modern listeners of like, there is all sorts of junk on Spotify. It is not hard to find really junky junk that people are throwing up there because the barrier is so low. But back then, making an album is more like making a movie, and that's what's interesting about like movies that are really, really bad is you're thinking about like a lot of people had to be involved in this and no small amount of money had to be spent to make this. And yet it's so glaringly bad.
I'm looking at you, Ice Cube's War of the Worlds.
This would be one. The room is almost too good to even fit into that category.
Yeah, I think the room fits in. I don't know this for a fact. I think the room fits into that self-aware category where it kind of knows what it's doing. Ice Cube's War of the Worlds. I haven't watched the full thing yet, but I mean, Ice Cube knows good art. Like I know he does. I know he's made some stink. He's made really good art. Some of it, not all of it, but his music. I like a lot of Ice Cube's music.
Sure.
But maybe, now that I think about it, do I like any Ice Cube movies? Oh, maybe I need to backtrack on that.
I mean, all of the Friday movies.
Oh yeah, all the Friday movies. Yep. Yeah, you're right. So yeah, he knows how to make some decent art. So where did that come from? I guess he wasn't in charge of steering that ship. He was just there.
Yeah. I'm not really sure.
But anyway, talk about.
I think that's Ice the thing. Cube. if you're Kurt Cobain and you're a kid in the '80s digging this up, that is part of the thing of you're just like, this is an album. There's a CD, or I guess not a CD, a vinyl or a cassette. How did this like come into being in my hand right now?
That was the other thing when I was reading this quote about how there may have only been 100 pressing. Obviously, there had to have been more copies made because how does some kid in Washington end up with one of 100 copies?
I'm sure somebody re-released it, right?
They had to have. I don't know what version Kurt had, but it seems really weird to me.
Remastered and re-released in 1988.
Okay, that makes sense. That'd be probably what he heard.
Rounder Records.
Rounder Records. The Rounder.
Yeah, and then it was re-released again in 1999 by RCA.
That makes sense because by then the cult status had, risen to where they're like, yeah, well, we can probably get the rights to this for nothing and make some money on it. So why not? People like me want to hear about it.
So I'm sorry, that was excuse me. I want to correct myself. Rounder Records had first released it in 1980.
That makes even more sense.
They re-released it again in 1988. So you've got copies of this floating around.
Yeah, and it's not a hard record to find if you wanted to buy a copy, you can. It's out there.
Rounder Records, who you would know from other very similar bands such as Alison Krauss and Bela Fleck and Lead Belly and Woody Guthrie.
Oh yes, famous outsider musicians, Alison Krauss. Not one of the most angelic voices of our generation or anything. Yeah, very different. So the record comes out. Obviously, it doesn't really do much, but it's not too long after that. I'm skipping a few things. So Helen got married secretly in 1973, so she's getting out of the house. Austin, not happy. He reportedly chased her husband around with a shotgun after this happened. So he's a nutso. If all that evidence wasn't enough, there's one. He was crazy. The conflict is, as the daughters are getting older and becoming their own people and like finally clawing their way out from the shadows, there's just more and more conflict all the time. They want to go do stuff. They want to go be normal kids. Yeah. They want to go have fun. They want to go have experiences. They want to get jobs. And he's not having it. He wants them to be this famous rock band. And I think the stress of all this, I think the compounding issues and probably like, a lot of high blood pressure instances, like chasing people around with a shotgun, led to Austin dying of a heart attack at 47 in 1975. So just 6 years after that album was released.
Yep.
So, and as you can probably imagine, as soon as he dies, the Shaggs are like, cool, done with that. Not doing that anymore.
Yeah, we were all just doing that for our quasi-abusive father.
Mm-hmm. Yes, instruments were sold off. The sisters took regular working class jobs. And eventually the family house in Fremont was used as a fire department training exercise, and they burned it down. So it's like gone.
Yeah, you're not finding that anymore.
No. So this is like a big fast forward, but there are interviews with the girls. They're not girls at this point. They're actually fairly old ladies talking about all this that are really interesting to hear from their own perspective, and hearing some of the words that they would say and how they would say them is what leads me to believe that this was a pretty abusive situation. And then there was one thing I found like pretty late into the research, actually, that Helen revealed that Austin had possibly been sexually abusing her. So like he's just a bad guy, like just a bad guy in every way. And I can only imagine, like, these are the things we know. I think there's a lot we don't know.
Yeah.
And that stuff probably gets really, really dark, which is why, as funny as the output is, that's why I kind of said in the beginning, it gets dark really quickly. And I wonder how it's viewed, by their kids and stuff at this point, because it has become a little bit of a butt of a joke in some ways, with some people taking it very seriously, but it's difficult music to take seriously, even with all the context applied to it. So yeah, it's interesting, but that didn't stop the girls. So unfortunately, Helen passed away in 2006, but in some, instances, the group actually did get together and like played at a Wilco, festival.
Really?
Yeah. There's all these different things. Trying to read through some of this. Yeah. Basically, like, the outsider music community just completely embraced the Shaggs. They're often grouped up with like Daniel Johnston and stuff, and Wesley Willis. There he is. I forgot he was on this list. So, it's definitely something that came to be very beloved. But I hope that more people kind of dig in a little bit and realize, like, it's a dark story. The Shaggs one is, much more so than I gave it credit for. And at the same time, I still go back and listen sometimes, and it does make me smile. So
that's what matters the most. For me, like, you're more into outsider music than I am, though it's been fun through this process to get to know more of it. For me, like, I've listened to this like once because somebody played it for me years ago, and I was like, yep, that's bad. And it's funny because there's a lot of music that I have like sort of forced myself into that is difficult to like at first. But after a while you start to see the beauty in it, like a magic eye. And so it's like, I don't know what this says about me, but I like music that is off-putting and difficult, but that was like made with the idea that like this is going to be some high form of art. And I'm like, is that any different or better? Probably not. I don't know. But I wonder if there are people that listen to this album and are like, no, it's actually genius. It seems to me that there are people that like feel that way about it, that it's like just an accidental genius.
Oh, absolutely. A lot of people feel that way. I think that's how Kurt felt about it, very much so. I don't know if Zappa actually felt, just based on that, better than the Beatles quote. I'm like, do you really think that? Or what's going on? But what is kind of crazy is, like we said, the prophecy was like mostly true. And that's really weird.
That is the wildest thing about it all. Yeah. Like, no one saw it being in a Dada sort of way. Right. But it did work that way. And I guess that's the thing for me, is like, I like Marcel Duchamp and like Dadaism in like physical art, where it's like there's a urinal on a a podium, and this is art. Because to me, the intent behind it is what's interesting, as you're making a conceptual representation. In this case, of a urinal, of like somebody designed this. This is a thing that has form and function and was intended to be this way. Right. That can be art in the same way. For me, at least, the accidental genius, I just don't resonate with it quite as much. As like when Captain Beefheart takes a bunch of incredible musicians and then engineers a way for them to not be listening to each other while they're playing music, basically. The intent makes it more interesting to me. The lack of intent makes it not appeal to me, but I see why that's what's so unique about it for some people.
I just think the intent was unclear. They didn't know what to intend on, right? Yeah. And somehow it came out with like, while it's like very incoherent and very, very odd, it does make sense. Like if I really sit down, like I can't sit there and be like, this makes absolutely no sense and I have no idea what they're trying to do. I do see what they're trying to do.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's a lack of intent or if it's just like, I don't know. I'm being forced to do this and I don't know what it is.
Right.
So I get what you're saying though, through my lens, like, you know, listening to something like deathcore, you know, especially some of that like mid 2000s, like really where they were just trying to be heavy for heavy's sake. I feel like it's intentionally abrasive. It's intentionally like gory and weird and guttural. And that to me is like, that's stuff that I've always resonated with. And it's intentionally ugly. It's never going to be mainstream, though now it somehow has become mainstream. I still can't quite explain that one. And that is kind of the same thing you're talking about, where like Captain Beefheart, we've had to reference him a lot on this because I think there's a direct connection, sonically at least. He's doing it abrasively in a different way. Mm-hmm. He's doing it in almost a more chaotic way. And then like the deathcore stuff's in a more grotesque way.
Right.
If that makes any sense. There's always people who want to make noise that only a few other people want to hear. But I think as time goes on and those things repeat themselves over and over again, we find ourselves in a situation where actually we all want to hear weird stuff sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a good place to wrap up the Shaggs. What do you think?
I love it. I think that was nicely done. Artfully ended.
Thank you. Well, Scott, you want me to take this official wrap up? We'll read this out.
You're so good at it.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. All right, everybody. I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as Scott and I enjoyed bringing it to you. There is a lot more information with a lot more detail. This could have been a 3-hour episode. I intentionally tried to condense it down as far as I could in a bite-sized piece. And I think we might actually come in under an hour again. This is amazing. We're on such a track.
You're welcome, people. We're doing our best.
We're trying to give it to you in bite-sized pieces. Scott and I, as you may have noticed, are rather verbose, and it's difficult for us to compress things. So we're doing our best over here. But I hope you enjoyed this. If you are forcing your daughters to become a rock band and they don't want to be, stop it. You're doing a bad thing, and they probably won't be as popular as the Shaggs, so knock it off. And if they want to be in a rock band, that's awesome. So that's great. Keep doing that. But don't force anybody to do anything they don't want to do. All right, everybody. Thank you very much. Oh, wait, there's one thing you can force people to do. If you got a bunch of strangers in your car and you're driving through the countryside, listen to this podcast on repeat. They'll like it. That's right. Give us a 5-star. And we'll talk to you on the internet very soon. Bye-bye, folks.